you should have done. But hindsight is 20/20 vision.
Your background looks great. That's some of your art, I imagine.
It is. This one is Bliss.
Okay, so we've got Joanne Flinn in Singapore in her wonderful office. Bliss is in her background, and she does functional art would be the word that I'd use for that. Is that a good description?
I think so. The whole purpose is to be able to set the feeling of a space and use the artwork as the way of manifesting and making a particular feeling and intention present.
And so I've invited you today, and I thank you very much for joining me. And thank you so much for your wonderful wisdom on the book game industry. And it's been a lot of fun. You have had this wonderful experience with karma. And the vision of karma was a topic that I was inviting you to share a little bit about, because people right now, so far we've been talking about influencing and actually managing our narrative, the stories we tell ourselves. And then again, we went into the whole giving component, which Masami was so wonderful in sharing. One give one story. Deb came in and shared a little bit about creativity and healing. And now I'm going to explore a little bit. And some people might find this edging on woo-woo, yet we're inviting woo-woo for you too as a strategy here, because share a little bit about karma from your perspective, Anna, and the vision of karma.
Well, I personally find the expression, let's just go back to the woo-woo piece for a moment, because I find it a really weird word. It's often, and I'm just going to call it the way it is, it's often a word used by guys to put down anything that has a sense of being slightly intuitive.
Excellent.
AKA, I don't understand it, therefore it's woo-woo. However, most guys don't understand very much physics, and most guys understand even less quantum physics, and they're completely fine with quantum physics. So I can talk about this using pure language of quantum physics.
Lovely.
I can talk about it in hardcore business language, and I can talk about it in the language of karma, which frankly is far more fun. But just because, like, you know, why not pick the fun version? And occasionally the other ones will come in. So one of the most fundamental principles of, if you look at quantum physics, where the whole the observer effect is considered one of these days, one of the grounding concepts of it. And the interesting thing is that some of the experiments that have been done around this is that if you have a machine doing the observation, it doesn't influence it. But if you have a human being doing the observation, it does. Which says that there's a distinguishing factor about human beings. So what I'm going to suggest for the point of view of this conversation is that that's an element of consciousness. It's an element of awareness that by our definition and our putting our attention and thinking on something, we at some level shift it. And this is true at the quantum level. Just possibly this could be true at a larger level. So some of the pieces that you've already been talking about on this book launch, you know, provide really solid prefaces to, you know, where karma comes in on. The most fundamental concept in karma is that what you do comes back to you. So for anyone who grew up in the Christian tradition, that's called the golden rule. Do unto others as you'd like done unto you. In some other traditions, it's expressed slightly differently, but it all comes down to the same principle of what we give out shows up back to us. So if we're in angry and we're giving out angry, we get angry in various forms back to us. Personally, I don't like angry, so I do my best not to do angry, so I don't get a lot of angry back. I mean, it's that fun. It's, you know, I mean, it's like, it's not a complex idea, but it's different to the way we're used to thinking about life in action.
I like the word fundamental. It's interesting for me, and I'm very conscious of using the word interesting, yet it's, I often hear simple, and people don't really like simple, yet fundamental sounds like it's a little bit deeper, and there's some basic fundamentals. One of them is, again, be nice. Guess what? You're likely going to get nice back to yourself.
Oh my God, isn't this amazing? Like, you know, if you've ever walked down the street and you smiled at somebody,
You might get smiles back.
I know, it's amazing.
Laugh.
I mean, that's a simple way. Like even
laughter in
you
your
start
life.
laughing and playing, and now the laughter and play's gone up, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So the construct of karma, and where I started I made a choice late last year that it was time to talk about this actually in the business world. And then of course COVID-19 happens, which just, like it has to everybody. And it just struck me that this is the time, with all the noise and things that are going on and the uncertainty, that things that give us practical reference points that are things that we can look after ourselves. Because so much advice out there, particularly in the business space, is all about what other people need to be doing. And this is about what we are able to do for ourselves. So like if you take what Masami was talking about, the giving. So a super practical thing to do is to actually choose and say, like, okay, given what my business is about, what kind of giving would be the right sort of giving to support, i.e. the coming back at, that I would really like. Now, you could get really adventurous and you could pick a couple of elements in your business that you think would be really great. It might be that you want great customers. So the basic karmic prescription would be to go and be a great customer yourself. You know, what would great look like for you? It might be having an awesome team around you. Well, how can you show up in awesome teamness yourself? It might be this wonderful thing called cash flow, which is a business person we know and adore. In which case, it might be, what element of cash flow is important to me? It could be something as super practical as, I like having my invoices paid on time. You know, people who are like, you know, having their invoices pushed out. I was working with one organization the other day, and they were saying that one of their clients, because they have to have a bit of inside knowledge, was paying their invoices, 95% of the invoices were being paid late. I just go like, from a business point of view, it's not that I don't get their desire to hang on to cash. I've spent a stack of time in finance, and I'm a senior advisor at the Chartered Professional Accounting Association, so I can bore on this topic if you want me to. But from a karmic perspective, all that's doing is setting them up to be for cash to be tight. Because what they're doing is creating tightness in cash for other people by paying late. And so this is where the karmic philosophy starts getting a little bit, where people begin to find like, oh, no, now we've moved off it just being easy. This is where we're getting fundamental. Because this is where it starts getting like, oh, so even when it feels a little scary, it's like smiling at someone is easy, right? You just have to decide, I'm not going to be a grumble bum today and I'll smile at someone. But when you're feeling like cash flow is super tight and you don't know where the next piece is coming from, that level of personal courage to just choose to do something, you know, to pay a bill on time can be super scary. Now, let's just break this one down, because we've already had Masami on this one. So Masami talks about the power of giving, and she would have talked about how you can give in absolutely super micro ways. Now, karma works in super micro ways, so it's not about going out there and being this great big hero. You don't need, you know, no heroes required, no crises required. You know, so you could, from the karmic perspective, the advice is to see things as seeds, small seeds. So an oak tree, a massive oak tree is made by, you know, a little acorn that's probably the size of my thumbnail kind of thing. So it grows huge. So the point being that it's not about doing something massive and huge. So it could be as simple as choosing to go and deliberately support a child being in school for a day. It's not huge, but that's a day of school. It might be making sure some trees get watered, because that creates, and depending on how you look at your business, you could see that as contributing towards cash flow, water flowing. If you think about a bank, what's a bank? The edges of the flow of something. Currency, again, so water and money have a lot of energetic similarities in that kind, just in the linguistics. You could see that as something to do with the watering a tree. You might see that as something to do with sustainability. So, you pick the element that has the meaning for you and what your particular business and needs are. And this applies like for every individual who's listening. Each individual, we're essentially a business ourselves. Like, we've got our own profit and loss. We need money coming in. We pay bills, money goes out. We've got people in our ecosystem that are all part of it. So you can work on this as something that's personal, or you can see this as something that is a business practice and a business philosophy.
I love it. It's this idea that you're actively engaged in your words, your actions, your thoughts. You focus on what you're getting as feedback. In the book, Get 2020 Vision, I often will refer to it as the mirror, is that often you get the mirror. And it's funny when one starts to look at people around them, instead of blaming them for all the differences, they can actually be a little curious on what's the mirror teaching me here.
Yeah.
And to take that responsibility and then being able to shift it, to be able to actually make the shift in the word, to make the shift in the thought or the focus, so that we can tap into the things, the feelings that we want. And so compassion, joy, laughter, like, wouldn't that be cool to be able to infuse that into our lives on a regular basis, creating those new habits, creating those new ways of dealing with the external world?
Yeah.
Is that something that you've been finding that business is becoming more receptive to?
I'm seeing a real split, actually. There are some people who are choosing to see the current circumstances as a reason to go into fear. And the challenge when we go, this is at several levels, the challenge when we go into the fear cycle is physiologically, it tends to shut down our thinking. And it tends to make people, and because our thinking is more shut down, we tend to be more reactive and more negative. So it's our mindset is in like, what can go wrong? And instead of it being something that is just like, well, okay, look, so what, this could be happening a bit late. So what would I do to make sure it was on time? Which is a solutioning kind of frame of reference. It's into a problem and a worry frame of reference, which just creates a negative loop. So the whole mirror kind of concept, Dave, I think is just a gorgeous one. And the karmic tradition is that's what you see coming back to you. So the power is to be able to see it, and then, as you say, completely take ownership that I'm doing something that's creating that, which can be feeling slightly confronting, because it's like, oh my God, I don't really want that stuff to be my stuff. Except, and once you can do, that, so that here's the way of dealing with it. You go, oh, I don't want that to be my stuff. And then you go like, wah! And you just scream and resist it and just go like, wah! And then you go, okay, but if I say it's my stuff, then I can do something about it.
I think, again, what's nice is I believe that there is the runaway part, but then there's also the fight part. So like what Deb's saying, you got the fight, the flight, or the freeze. And so we got a lot of people stuck right now in freeze. We got people that are fighting it. They don't want things to change. They're very upset that it's not the way it used to be, or they want it to be the way it used to be. Yeah. And then there's people that are getting the heck out of here. So there is another approach. And that's, I believe, a big part of it is to breathe into it, and is to go in and almost create this new dance with the external world, yet allow the inner world to be nurtured, to be influenced, to be massaged, to be, again, expressed. That's what's beautiful about the writing, the poetry, the rollerblading. It's playful. It's and it allows us to get the energy flowing, as opposed to the reptilian response. And the reptilian response will often be the first response. Yet what's beautiful, we can actually invite our pre-cortex brain into it and interrupt the reptile a little bit and bring in, that's what I'm finding being an elderly caregiver right now, is that I get triggered, yet I'm finding it so funny to be triggered back to a 7-year-old boy who doesn't get what he wants right away. And the reaction guy could be there, yet breathing into it, smiling into it, and then service and being kind. Being kind to my mom and dad has been so nurturing for me, to be kind to me. I'm learning.
Well, that's what I was going to ask, how you see it showing up. Because it's like you do feel it inside, don't you? And it's like that something else starts flourishing.
Again, compassion, kindness, curiosity. What beautiful, beautiful flowers to plant daily. Taking care of it with water and sunshine. And then you get these tomatoes that come out, and you eat these tomatoes, and they're delicious, and they're from your garden. And so the farmer technique in caring and being has been, wow, again, talk about gratitude. It's talking about it too, yet going and practicing it and playing with it, and then going and writing about it, maybe making a little video about it. That's, again, with Deb, it's about filmmaking. And again, so there's some people here that some of these films that are going to be created right now, I'd love to see every chapter of the book to be put into a little 2-minute film, because wouldn't a 2-minute film on grief be wonderful, or depression, and making it so it's uplifting, yet it's also engaging, and it's fun, it's playful. So that's part of the visioning of putting that karma out, because it's what I'm living right now. And it's just so beautiful to be able to do that, perhaps for the elderly, could be for the young ones. And that's the spectrum of it. My life is pretty wacky right now, because on the one hand, I'm hanging out with these 80-year-olders, and then I'm hanging out with these young kids on one side, and playing in many different arenas, yet the conversations are often about compassion, patience, curiosity, laughter, playfulness.
My God, like humanity.
When you get a message like Hillary Carter shared with us, is that we really have an opportunity to be part of the shifting the narrative. And what you just shared, that there is still a stickiness to fear. Fully agree.
Well, so let's move on to the other side of it, because one of the so there is this narrative that we go into fear. Okay, now I would just say, like, okay, I haven't had any kids, but I've seen lots of babies, and I've seen parents with babies, and I'm looking like most little kids have zero sense of fear. Right? And I say this because we're told as adults fear is normal and natural. And I'm going, yeah, we learned it at some stage. Because if it was normal and natural, then babies would have it. Because that's before they've got socialized programming. But they don't. So I'm going like, really? Then yeah, there may be a certain level of biological response, but a vast majority of our socialized response is it's cultural training. So which the cool thing is once we start going like, okay, that's a possibility, we can deliberately choose to change our own cultural training. Like, okay, if you notice that you're going into any kind of stress, deliberately choose to do something that's fun. Deliberately choose to focus on something that's good. There's like the classic exercise, which I think is originally a Zen exercise. I don't know the exact origination, but it's one of those ones. It's smile until you feel good.
Actually, and moving, for me these days, moving the neck is just so beautiful, because it really does feel good. And even just bringing this laughter yoga, like raise your hands, folks, and just bring it up and just go, ha, 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 ha. And I've been teaching this to my parents lately. It's just like, they do think it's crazy, yet they're doing it. That's what's fabulous. So I do have a question from Deb for you too, Anna. Okay. It's like, personal financial security is jeopardy for many right now. What advice would you give to move people out of their survival brain in a realistic, proactive way?
Okay. I would see, so let's talk numbers at one very practical level, and then let's go deliberately into like formal traditional karma at another level. think of this like I'm talking in the sense of physics, and then I'm talking in the sense of chemistry. So different fields have different ways of responding. And so depending on where things are. So one of the really practical things right now is looking at all the different expenses you have and simplifying your life big time. For anyone who's had a really affluent life, this is a tough thing because they're used to the affluence and they're used to the image of it. And so this is a little bit of a moment of going like, well, what's more important? Me feeling financially relaxed because I've simplified my life, or me feeling like I'm keeping up with the Joneses and being super stressed. And that's a very personal choice. But if you decide that you're not feeling stressed is the call that you want to make, then you work out what's important. I mean, one of the interesting things with COVID-19 is the number of us who have not been out socializing in the way that we might have done. And therefore the amount of funds that suddenly hasn't gone out and dinners out and all the other sorts of things, and then once you've got a sense of what the simpler life can be, which is i.e. the simpler cash flow, you can start looking at it and going like, well, what's my runway? Is it 3 weeks? Is it 6 weeks? Is it 6 months? And then the different time horizons will give different elements of what's the really, practical real life thing to go do. I mean, I've had periods of my life where I've literally gone like, I'm going like, I've got runway that's 4 days. And then sometimes literally down to feeling like a day. And in the not necessarily that far distant past as well. So I'm not talking about university student days, okay? Which was kind of normal as a university student. But, as an adult. And, it's super scary, but this is where actually one of the reasons why the karma thing to me has had its power, is that when I let that fear stop me from acting, I couldn't get out and do something constructive because the fear basically was overwhelming my mind. And I remember one particular day when, funds were super, super low, and I think I knew that, I knew that there'd be something like $500 would be coming in a couple of days. And then that would be, enough to eke me out, for a while. And that felt like a lot of money at the time because that was going to be eked out a fair amount of time. And I got on the bus and some tourists got on the bus. And they didn't have local money in Singapore to be able to buy themselves a bus ticket. And they needed like $2 or $2.20, I think it was, to go and get the ticket that they needed. And I had $2 in my wallet, and that was the only $2 I had. And I thought about it because I'm going like, this is my last bit of money. I thought, no, because they're a stranger in a country. I can help them. And just trust that I'm going to be okay. And I figured, well, worst case, I go back home and see if there's some crackers in the house, and that's what dinner is going to be. And so I went up, gave them the $2. Of course, as a tourist, when you're in a strange country, in a strange city, that's a hugely wonderful thing. Went back and just sat down, and it felt so good to have not let fear win. To deliberately choose to go and be kind. And, as Masami says, it wasn't a massive amount. And there's in some traditions that there's stories about this. When you don't have a lot and you do something for somebody else, there's so much power in that because you're choosing to be a constructive person rather than someone who's in fear. And so to Deb's one, so in this space of, okay, so there's some practical like crunch numbers, simplify life, but in that, look at what Masami was talking about in terms of being able to give. There's in most cities there will be places that are still looking for volunteer help. They'll be looking. There's a wonderful kitchen here that. The last time I was helping them, we were doing 2,500 meals a day. Which takes an awful lot of like vegetables being chopped, food being cooked, and stuff being packed, and then it would be distributed out to different people. And for a lot of those people receiving it, that was the only meal they got in a day. And so I felt, even though my life at that stage was not in any sense of financial wealth, it was in that period I was just describing, to be able to go and help somebody else, and knowing that me, by showing up there for a couple of hours, meant hundreds of people were getting fed, was a space of me owning my life and owning my capacity to help others. And that creates a very, very different space to operate and react and be with other people. And you never know what conversations can come out of who else is there. If nothing else, you might get a good conversation rather than being
I want to add to what you just said, because there is this element. Great question, Deb. Yet it is about getting out of the narrative of not having enough and focus on all the bills and focus on the fear and focus on the what ifs in the negative. And it's good to do what I believe that Anna said too, is do your numbers, know your numbers, use it as a compass, like know what's coming in, what's going out, and have a reality check. Yet then you have a choice to go do something about it. And so one of the things that I've really seen shift the energy for people is when they do some acts of service. Now, the invitation is to be the student of bravery and courage at that time, because it's going to take bravery and courage to go do it. Just like it takes bravery when you see someone maybe fall, like who's going to be the first one to go help that person? Is it going to be you, or you're too afraid to even go and help? And so there is that element that one looks to create a new relationship, again, a beginner's eyes to bravery. Me being brave at 55 is going to be different than me being brave at 65 and 70, because I'm going to be dealing with other issues. And so one of the things that once you've done it, you think you've got it. No, actually, we have to continue to work on ourselves. And so in financial, we can be financially curious, and it's important, because once you think you've got it, that's when the market will crush you too, because there's that ego going into the false ego, as opposed to allowing humility to nurture, to allowing presence and curiosity, sincere curiosity. Because if you think you know, I don't know my mom. My mom today is going to be a new being, July 25th edition of my mom. And me being curious and actually caring and compassionate, it's totally different than, oh, I know exactly what she wants. No, actually today, isn't it cool to go ask? And I love the idea of going and helping out a food bank or a food place, because the care that you're going to do with the food and you're going to appear as your new evolving self, not your past, perhaps carrying all of the past luggage.
Yeah. And if you really want to like amp it up, when whatever you're doing, like if you go to a food place, all I can say is most of them are really, really appreciative, because it does take an awful lot of work to go and get meals together and out. Is whatever you're doing, do it with that sense of love. Do it with that. Even if you're like peeling vegetables and getting stuff done, or the place that I was at, I'd been there a lot, and I got to the august senior position, otherwise known as the person who got to serve the rice. It was clearly one of those things. You had to be trusted to serve the rice, because you had to pack it properly and put it out so that it was the right shape in the thing. But I think actually one of the real reasons was that they were very careful was it was very hot. The rice was super hot, and you basically would end up with a very, very burnt finger out of it. So they wanted people who were, had some stamina, and you needed to have shown up a few times before you got given that particular gig. But what I noticed was that the people who just settled in as they were doing it, but they were in that, instead of being up in their head thinking about what they're doing, they kind of moved their brain down into being in their heart, and they were doing it from there, made a massive difference into how they were feeling, but also how the other people around them were. And you think about that. I mean, anyone that may remember, some of you may remember that wonderful movie about chocolate. This lady going into a town and making chocolate, and it was just so wonderful and things like that. And her comment was, it was chocolate that was made with love. And just think about when you've had food that someone has made with love, how it has a different taste and essence then it's when it's made with anger, or disdain, or being, not even really engaged in it, being mechanical. So you can choose to be doing things. So when Dave talked about, there was the space of, what you're doing, your actions are one layer, what you're saying is another layer, and then the third one is what you're thinking, or what you're being, if you want to sort of make it a bit broader than just what your brain is saying, but what you're being. And that's a very, very cool thing to be thinking about in these times, is just, we do have a capacity to choose how we want to think and feel. And so, like Deb, it's another element that comes to me at this stage on your question, is that sometimes we want to sit there and worry about super far out in the future elements. Like, will I have enough in 6 months? Will I have enough in 12 months? Will I have enough when I retire? I love that question. Will I have enough when I retire? I mean, the truth is, who knows? The world's changing so much. But if you know you've got enough for the next 4 weeks, get on and use those 4 weeks to do something really great. And tell the mind or the fear story that it can go on holiday for 4 weeks.
So let's ask you another question about vision.
Vision.
Vision. Because we met and we were focusing on 2020 vision, and we had a big millennial goals that we were collaborating with.
Yeah.
Do you find it easier to vision to 2030, or do you find yourself going back to 2010 or 2000? Because today, for me, this journey has been quite divinely guided to go back to 2000, July 25th, Justin's birthday.
Wow.
Today is a day that was truly the most traumatic day of my life. Missing his birth was by far the most traumatic, my most emotionally charged anger I had ever experienced in my life. The fear, the sadness, the disappointment at the most extreme levels in my life.
Wow.
And getting to a point where I fully exhausted myself and fell into prayer. Fell into prayer, exhausted prayer, and then was woken at 3:43 in the morning by a phone call saying, David, congratulations, you have a baby boy, and he's so cute. And going from that point of being so apologetic, so sad, yet so grateful, I then went and did my presentation to the Minister of Finance in Indonesia, because I was asked to teach how to bring money, US dollars, into Indonesia because they didn't have any. People were starving. Yet that day, July 25th, I came back, I flew after my talk to the Minister of Finance, I went back to the hospital, saw my son for the first time, picked him up, apologized profusely to his mother for not being there. And she said, it's okay, you're here now. What do you want to call him? And that's why we called him Justin, just in time to teach his father some wonderful lessons. I made a decision on that day to get out of the finance industry direct and start being into social entrepreneurship. It's been a 20-year journey today.
Wow.
I'm very honest with you, I don't know what my 2040 vision is. I knew what it was in 2000. 2020, as you know, for the last 20 years, it's been about social entrepreneurship. For the last 10 years, it's been mainly looking to elevate women in leadership because of the compassion that women have in leadership. Me now being an elderly caregiver has infused a whole new level of compassion, patience, curiosity. I'm looking at 2030 or 2040. I really don't see anything right now, yet I see today. With incredible gratitude. Get 2020 vision is about today. I can bet you right now that book will help people get vision, 2020 vision on gratitude. That's what the GPS system is about. When I ask you the question about visioning 2040 or visioning 2000, which one do you play with, or which one does your mind go to more? And then share a little bit, please.
Wow. For me, well, 2020 for me was, I just moved, it was the dotcom, the dotcom boom into the dotcom bust. I met up the other day with a long-standing friend and colleague from those days, and I was literally about to get on a plane to Bermuda to set up a bank, one of the very, very first internet banks. Banking license had been acquired, and I was meant to go over and lead the project to set it up. And then everything shifted, and there went that idea for life. So it was a turbulent time. And I suppose something just at the personal level now, looking at things, is, we're in another one of those. And the idea of 2040, like 20 years, I hope and fully intend to be around. I would like it to be a planet that is healthy and at temperatures that are humane. Which does mean our lifestyle as human beings on this planet as a collective, or the technologies we use and the techniques we use for said lifestyles will need to shift somewhat. And so what that world will be, I hope, I have hopes. I mean, if you think back to 2020, some of the things that we thought could come to pass haven't, and some really good things have. And, my inner hope, and I say hope rather than vision, because I can't say at the moment I have that on it, is that the confluence of things creates a new trajectory where, life has a bit more time and presence in it, that we're able to do things in a way that is thinking not just of ourselves, but of the consequences and cost to others.
Jody mentioned that we have some challenges right now. We have to reinvent the way we honor Mother Earth and deal with climate change. And we have communications that can be taken to a whole new level. We have education, we have violence, we have, again, some challenges. And I do have a level of confidence in our young people that they will find some wonderful ways. It's funny, in working in a men's group recently in Africa, 15 of the 18 people who spoke on this parenting fatherhood workshop their narrative was very much about the past. There was 2 or 3 of us that actually were inviting people to start being part of the narrative that is empowering and uplifting for our young people. And it was a fascinating perspective that, again, when you talk 50-50 or are focused on fear, that particular talk, there was a lot of narrative about the history. And I invited people to start being part of the conversation and the narrative of what the young ones, it's not about us going to the young ones to tell them what to do. And that's my biggest parenting observation in the last year has been, my advice to Justin, no, I don't need to give advice to Justin. My curiosity for Justin, because he knows himself better than I know him. And if I'm giving him advice, it's as if I'm giving myself advice. And look at the advice I gave myself, which I laugh at because I didn't necessarily think I gave myself that great advice. Yet, me to tell Justin what he should do, given my perspective, no, I have to be and choose to be curious to guide him because he knows what's best for him in a totally new world. He was been born in 2020, in 2000.
He's a proper millennial.
He is. And so his wisdom and what he teaches me on a daily basis when I hang out with him, or when I monthly basis when I might get to see him, it's incredible. And the world he's in, he's doing an internship right now in Bitcoin trading. It's like,
wow,
fantastic. So our parenting skills may want to shift. In fact, being curious with our kids instead of thinking we know what's best for them, because guess what? We don't. I don't feel. That's one of the big things. My next book is likely going to be on what's called biracial parenting. And it's looking at the third culture kids. Someone like Justin, who's parents are from another country, and he was raised in Singapore. And so experimenting and exploring.
Yeah.
vision. I love what you said is that, or at least I heard, hope is a big part
Mm.
of what we're seeding.
Yeah.
You also, with your wonderful mind and creativity and infusing it in logic with your wonderful left brain and your curiosity and understanding deeper fundamentals is a part of the journey that I'm really excited about
Yeah.
unfold.
Yeah. I do think one of the things, there's one of the narratives I've noticed that I'd invite the adults on who are here to pick up on, is that I've noticed a tendency in some conferences to go and look and say, well, the young will go, and it's like, excuse me, you know, we're here too. We're actually capable of doing a fair amount to change things ourselves. You know, we're still, you know, we still exist. We have agency, we have influence. And that as much as it's about a space and not telling people that are younger than us how they should be living their lives, that we also have a space to be able to go, well, okay, how do we make our lives and our contribution and impact to others and the planet better? It's not about to me, it's not about kicking the ball down the, you know, for another 20 years to another generation. It's going, every generation that's on the planet now has a capacity to do something constructive, including taking full ownership for our lifestyles and the cost of those lifestyles.
Right. Have you been involved at all with the decluttering movement in the last 6 months at all? Has that been part of your journey in Singapore with the circuit breaker and just the letting go and moving forward with that?
Oh, well, I declutter fairly regularly.
Right.
It's sort of, it's not quite an annual ritual, but it's something that happens, you know, on a.
Would you share a tool or two or three tips for our listeners today on decluttering? Because I had a feeling that you are a master declutterer. Like, we've talked about this, I think, for over 5 years. And I believe that you've done it in some wonderful ways. So maybe decluttering tip 1, 2, 3 for people, just so that, again, our listeners can get another view. Because this, again, in Get 2020 Vision, a lot of that was talked about because, as you know, after 33 years away from Canada, I went back to Canada with less than 100 kilos. In fact, 60 kilos is all I going back. So decluttering is something I think I got my certificate on that one. Yet I welcome 2 or 3 ideas from you on decluttering, please.
I'll print you out one. I find that decluttering is actually a process of going, I take it as layers. So it's not something I've found I can go and do once and it's done and I'm done forever. It's something that needs, that I do, like I said, I do it periodically just because it feels good. It's also a great way of reminding myself what I actually do have. Amazing what stuff. It's like, oh my God, look what I just found. This is so cool. So there's always some fun discoveries. I operate more on a philosophy. How I'll approach it is I'll pick one particular room in the house to focus on. And then in that, I'll pick one particular section. So like if it was the bedroom, I might just go, okay, I am just going to focus on the cupboard. One cupboard. And if I'm feeling very slow on it, I might focus on just one shelf in said cupboard. You know, this is not about heroic goals. This is about, I know if I just do a bit every day, it will get done. The technique I found most helpful for me is to, like, if I'm, say, looking at the wardrobe and doing that, is to just pick one section of it and take everything out of that and put it somewhere else, and then clean that space so it actually is empty. But then I have to make conscious decisions on what do I want to put back in. And then that's and now once things have been moved out and they're over there, and then I can go, well, what do I want to put back there? Okay, I can look at this and I go, is it something that brings me joy? Does it lift me? And I think one of my TEDx talks, I talk about the test of, does it lift or lower? And it's like, you know, you can usually tell whether something pulls you up or drags you down. If it drags you down, my strongest invitation is decide it's going in the trash bin. And just go, if it pulls you down, puts in the trash can. Now, if it's something you say, I desperately need because it's the only thing I have at this one, if you possibly have the financial resources, my invitation would be to throw that thing that lowers you down out, get it out, and then go buy something new that has new energy, that is bought from the intention of this is going to bring me joy, rather than have something, old with the other, negativities associated with it. I mean, you and I, one of the friends that we went to Morocco with was telling me a story of something that she had that she'd kept on because it was logical and all that. And it was only once they cleared it out, suddenly all sorts of stuff started moving in a positive direction. So if your sense is, okay, that lowers. And by the way, anybody who's super rational on this one, this is not woo-woo. I do this with the chartered professional accountants, and they, as accountants, can tell, you just test this one out. They're accountants, right? They can walk into a meeting room and without people saying anything, tell you whether the atmosphere is good or bad.
Accountants, wow, that's fantastic.
Oh, it's amazing. I figure, I tell them this too. I go like, if accountants can do it, so can the rest of us. Just saying.
Great. I love your tip. That's a great strategy. It's a great approach. I got a question on karma for you. Is that okay?
Oh, yeah.
All right. From Suan, karma is both balance and energy. What specifically do people have difficulty in appreciating the impact of their action towards others and themselves? Where are they short-sighted?
There's so many people only look at where they are. It's like, it's me here. And one of the broader principles of karma is it's all of us. And so what I do to you, I'm doing to me, which is, hence part of that thing about it comes back. I mean, it's really weird how stuff does come back. So what I remember when I was first learning this thing, the master who was teaching me they said, just draw a circle. Take that circle that you have around you, but make it bigger so it includes the other person. And then go, given the consequence to that other person, would I like that myself? Because they're now me. And that sometimes that kind of visual thing about creating that bigger circle around is really helpful to be going, okay. Think about this one in the business, the business sense, or with a friend. Like if I've borrowed money from someone and I'm going like, cash flow is super tight, I don't want to pay back, but I promised the other friend, if I don't have a clean conversation to see if they're okay with me paying it back a bit later and testing it out, I'm imposing my fear and the consequences on them. Whereas if I go like, okay, would this be possible, and have a clean conversation, you'd be amazed how often the other party goes, okay, cool, that's fine. Thank you for telling me. Thank you for asking. And it's that movement from getting out of being in my own stuff into appreciating that my action has an impact on somebody else, and that it's cleaner to have a clean conversation and then give the other person space and be prepared for wherever they're at. Thing is, I'm asking a blessing from them to adjust something. Does that help? You've got a chat going there.
I think Suan's got the thumb up there. So again, I believe that I like the idea of having a circle, because for me, it fits in very much with the crazy eight or the infinity sign, which again, doing some of the Qigong work. And even I've got a new yoga practice right now where I'm infusing laughter yoga and organ massage from Master Chia from Thailand. And it really is about allowing us to potentially bringing people into our circle, and as opposed to judging them harshly, bringing them into our circle of the fullness of it. And therefore we don't have to attack. We can see it from a different perspective.
Yeah.
Now, managing your space, I think what you're saying about managing your space and choosing what's in your space is, again, something that we're inviting our consciousness into.
Yeah.
Thank you so very much.
Total pleasure.
I appreciate your time, your energy, your karma you're sharing with us, the vision, continued success in Singapore. Please let us know if we can be of any assistance.
Well, Dave, I hope your Vision 2020 poofs up to the next level, and I'm absolutely confident it shall.
Well, thank you so very much. And I appreciate all the assistance that you infused into it and the enthusiasm and energy. Thank you, Yana.
My pleasure, Dave.
What I should have done, but hindsight is 20.